The recycled air of the RSV Nomad always tasted faintly of ozone and Kalen Vance's persistent, damnably good, synth coffee. Lyra, a Kthar warrior with reflexes honed by 1,000 simulated dogfights and skin the color of a twilight nebula, wrinkled her nose. It was an expressive gesture, one that rippled the subtle bioluminescent patterns beneath her amethystine skin, a fleeting shimmer of blues and violets that Kalen, if he ever noticed such subtleties, never commented on. He probably didn't even notice. Humans. So gloriously, frustratingly, dense. Their sensory apparatus seemed so limited, their focus so narrow. How did they even navigate the complexities of the galaxy? Another thrilling day in the void's armpit, wouldn't you say, Vance? Lyra's voice, a melodic contralto that could shift to a battle cry in a nanosecond, cut through the low hum of the recon vessel. She swiveled her pilot's chair, the worn synth leather sighing beneath her. Her silver-white hair, braided with obsidian Kthar beads that were said to ward off ill luck in the deep void, shimmered in the dim emergency lighting that was their constant companion in this disputed slice of the galaxy. The Orion Spur Dead Zone, Stellar Concord charts called it. Such a prosaic, unimaginative label for a region teeming with gravitational anomalies and pirate ambushes. Poetic, indeed. Kalen didn't look up from his navigation console. Typical. His focus was absolute, a trait Lyra grudgingly admired even as it irked her. That unwavering concentration was probably what kept them alive on more than one occasion. His close-cropped auburn hair caught the amber glow of a status light, his profile stoic, etched with lines that spoke of more than just his 30-odd Terran years. A soldier, yes. Commander in the Stellar Concord Special Reconnaissance Division. But there were shadows in those gray eyes when he thought no one was looking, a flicker of something, older. Deeper. A weariness that seemed out of place on a man supposedly in his prime. She often wondered what battles, seen and unseen, had carved those lines onto his face. Just, Kalen, is fine, Lyra. We've been sharing this tin can for 6 standard months, I think we're past formalities. And this armpit is currently paying our fuel chits, he rumbled, his voice a steady baritone. He finally glanced over, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. It was a rare sight, that smile. Besides, I find the nebulosity rather picturesque. Lyra snorted, a delicate, unladylike sound for a Kthar, whose expressions of disdain were usually far more guttural. Picturesque. It's a cosmic dustbin where empires come to bicker over forgotten rocks and nebulous claims. And your human names for everything. Orion Spur. So, blunt. She leaned forward, a playful glint in her multifaceted eyes, each facet catching the light differently. Like your given names. John. Michael. David. Predictable. No artistry, no song to them. He raised an eyebrow, the smile widening a fraction, revealing a hint of the man beneath the commander's carefully constructed facade. And I suppose Kthar names are all symphonies of cosmic wonder, each one a 3-act opera. Precisely. She preened, just a little, her antennae twitching almost imperceptibly, a Kthar sign of amusement. The Kthar had a rich, complex linguistic heritage, after all. Their names were poems, histories, prophecies. Not like these monosyllabic Terrans. My true name, for instance, it's not just a label. It's a song. A tapestry woven from the harmonic resonance of the stars that aligned at my first breath, the whispers of the ancestor spirits from the shimmering veil, the very essence of my soul spark. It's the universe in sound. She paused, a mischievous thought taking root, blooming like a night flower in the void. The isolation of these long recon missions sometimes bred interesting diversions. And this human, for all his stoicism, occasionally surprised her. An interspecies pairing was unheard of, a cultural taboo, an abomination to some on her homeworld, Kythan, but the faint, almost imperceptible hum of something between them was a constant thrum beneath the deck plates. An annoying, intriguing, sometimes exhilarating vibration. I bet a human couldn't even pronounce it, she continued, tilting her head, the long line of her neck elegant and strong. Let alone guess it. The vibrations, the subharmonics, they're beyond your species' typical range. It said that if a being of another species could truly speak Kthar's soul name, with all its inherent power and resonance, by the ancient law, our fates would intertwine. Irrevocably. She laughed, a bright, chiming sound that bounced off the cramped cockpit walls, a startling contrast to the deep space silence beyond their hull. Can you imagine, Kalen? Bound for life to a boring, predictable human because he got lucky with a name? The challenge was out there now, a shimmering, baited hook. She didn't expect him to take it seriously. It was a cultural artifact, a piece of Kthar lore, half forgotten by many, not something a pragmatic human soldier would even consider. He'd probably just grunt, that little muscle in his jaw tightening the way it did when he was dismissing something as illogical, and go back to his charts. The stars outside the main viewport were a cold, indifferent tapestry of diamond dust scattered across black velvet. Unblinking. Eternal. Inside the Nomad, the silence stretched, thicker than usual, pregnant with unspoken possibilities. Kalen's gaze wasn't on his console anymore. It was on her. And for the first time since she'd known him, Lyra saw not just the soldier, not just the stoic commander, but that hidden depth, a keen, almost predatory intelligence focusing with unnerving intensity. The playful smirk on her face faltered, a tiny seed of unease, strangely mixed with a thrilling anticipation, sprouting in her primary heart. What if? No. Impossible. The weight of her playful words, words spoken into the void of their shared solitude, suddenly felt immense, a stone dropped into a still, dark pool, the surface just beginning to tremble. The ripples were only just beginning to spread. The challenge, uttered with a light-heartedness that belied its profound implications, hung between them, heavy as a neutron star in the cramped confines of the Nomad's cockpit. Kalen's usually unreadable face was, for once, an open book, a book Lyra found herself desperately, confusingly, wanting to read. He met her multifaceted gaze, that earlier hint of a smile now replaced by an expression of intense concentration, almost recognition. No, that was impossible. Utterly. Then he opened his mouth. What issued forth was not human speech. Not the blunt, practical sounds she associated with Kalen, with his species. It was music. A complex, multi-layered cascade of notes, an intricate melody that shimmered like distant starlight, rising and falling in perfect, breathtaking harmonic intervals. It was sound no human vocal cords should have been able to produce, a resonance that vibrated not just in the air, but deep within Lyra's Kthar bones, in the very core of her being. It was precise. It was perfect. It was her name. Ilaria Th Soranol. Her soul name. The universe seemed to fracture. Lyra's twin heart stuttered, a painful arrhythmia that stole her breath. The bioluminescent patterns beneath her amethystine skin, usually a subtle, swirling galaxy, flared into a blinding supernova of azure and violet, then extinguished, leaving her skin momentarily dull, ashen. Her silver-white hair, usually so vibrant, seemed to lose its luster. Her antennae, which had twitched with amusement moments before, now drooped, a sign of profound shock and disorientation. A wave of vertigo washed over her, so intense she gripped the arms of her pilot's chair to keep from falling. It felt as if the very stars outside had lurched in their courses. How? The word was a mere whisper, a thread of sound lost in the sudden, deafening roar of her own blood in her auditory canals. Her mouth opened, then closed, no other sound emerging. She stared at Kalen, this human, this enigma, who had just casually unraveled the deepest, most sacred secret of her existence with an impossible, beautiful, terrifying sound. He looked almost as surprised as she felt, his gray eyes wide, a flush creeping up his neck. As if he hadn't quite known what he was capable of. Or perhaps, hadn't understood the true magnitude of what he'd just done. But the ancient law was immutable. Unflinching. It cared not for ignorance, nor for jests. A soul name spoken by one not of the Kthar, if uttered with true resonance, forged a bond. A soul binding. Not a mere contract of marriage, not a simple joining of lives, but a profound, spiritual intertwining of fates, a connection that transcended the physical, the temporal. Their destinies, once separate streams, were now, and forever, one raging river. The thought was cataclysmic. Her carefully ordered life, her mission, her very identity, had just been irrevocably altered by a human's impossible feat before either of them could process the cataclysm, before Lyra could even begin to form the thousand burning questions that seared her mind. The Nomad's proximity alarms shrieked through the cockpit, a savage, metallic scream that tore the moment apart. Red alert icons flashed across their consoles, painting Kaylin's suddenly grim face in bloody hues. Hostiles. Kaylin's voice was rough, all traces of surprise gone, replaced by the clipped efficiency of the commander. Unidentified craft, closing fast, no transponder codes. Looks like our little jaunt through the dead zone just got interesting. He was already a blur of motion, fingers flying across the controls, the ship lurching as he threw it into evasive maneuvers. Lyra snapped back to professional mode, her Kthar warrior instincts overriding the personal turmoil. Barely. Her hands, usually so steady on the stick, trembled slightly as she activated the weapon systems. 3 of them, she reported, her voice tight, scanning the tactical display. 4 lag scout ships by the configuration. Lightly armed, but fast. They're trying to flank us. The 4-lag hegemony. Scavengers and opportunists, with a nasty habit of preying on isolated vessels in disputed territories. And they'd just stumbled right into their hunting grounds. Hang on. Kaylin grunted, yanking the Nomad into a gut-wrenching dive towards the asteroid field below, a chaotic jumble of rock and ice. We can lose them in there. Maybe. The next few minutes were a blur of high-G turns, near misses, and the percussive thud of stray particle beams impacting their shields. Lyra matched Kaylin's maneuvers, her own piloting skills pushed to their limits, firing bursts from their aging laser cannons whenever she got a targeting lock. They worked together with a desperate, unspoken synchronicity, a dance of survival played out against a backdrop of deadly fire. The earlier shock, the impossible revelation of the soul binding, was momentarily buried beneath the immediate need to stay alive. Buried, but not forgotten. It simmered beneath the surface, a silent, powerful undercurrent to their frantic efforts. There. Lyra pointed to a dense cluster of larger asteroids, a shadowed canyon carved into the heart of the field. If we can make it through that, the magnetic interference from those iron-rich behemoths might mask our signature long enough to slip away. Kaylin didn't hesitate. He nodded, his jaw tight, and threaded the Nomad through an impossibly narrow gap, the ship's hull scraping against rock with a screech that set Lyra's teeth on edge. They emerged into the relative calm of the asteroid canyon, the pursuing 4-lag ships momentarily confused, their sensors struggling with the chaotic magnetic fields. He cut the main engines, letting their momentum carry them into the deepest shadows. Silence descended, broken only by the frantic thumping of Lyra's twin hearts and their ragged breathing. The cockpit, already small, felt infinitely more so now, charged with the unspoken. The immediate danger had passed, but a far more complex, far more intimate one remained, hanging between them like a physical presence. Lyra finally turned to Kaylin, her voice barely a tremor. We need to talk, Kaylin. About what you did. How you knew. The question, the real question, lay heavy in the sudden, suffocating quiet. The silence in the asteroid canyon was a living thing, pressing in on them, amplifying the frantic rhythm of Lyra's twin heartbeats and the ragged edge of Kaylin's breathing. Her question, how did you know? Still echoed in the confined space of the Nomad's cockpit, a demand, an accusation, a plea. He finally turned from the tactical display, the 4-lag pursuers momentarily forgotten, though their sinister red icons still blinked ominously on the periphery of the screen. His face, usually a mask of military composure, was etched with an uncharacteristic weariness, and something else, a vulnerability that mirrored her own. It's complicated, Lyra, he began, his voice low, rough. He ran a hand through his close-cropped auburn hair, a nervous gesture she'd rarely seen from him. 3 years ago. Proxima Station. Joint Stellar Concord Cathar operation. There was a diplomatic reception, celebrating some new trade accord. Your father's delegation was there. Lyra's multifaceted eyes widened. Her father, a renowned Cathar diplomat and traditionalist. You were there. I don't recall seeing any humans in the inner sanctum during the rite of stellar accord. Her memory of that event was vivid. It was one of the last times she'd seen her father before embarking on her current long-term assignment with the Concord. You wouldn't have, Kalen confirmed, his gaze distant, lost in the memory. I was, security detail. Not exactly front and center. But during the ceremonial naming ritual, the part where the Cathar elders blessed the agreement by invoking the names of their lineage, your father spoke your true name, Ilaria Th Soranal, as part of the blessing. For prosperity, for unity. A cold dread, sharp as an ice shard, pierced through Lyra's shock. Impossible, she whispered, the word catching in her throat. No human ear could capture the harmonic complexities of a Cathar soul name from a single hearing. The resonance, the subvocals, it's beyond your species' auditory range. It would be just noise to you. She felt a surge of something akin to anger, or perhaps betrayal. Had he been toying with her? Was this some elaborate human trick? Kalen's expression grew serious, his gray eyes locking onto hers. You're right. A normal human couldn't. The implication hung heavy between them, a silent, damning admission. Lyra studied his face, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The way he sometimes seemed to anticipate her movements, the uncanny ability he had to understand her clipped, frustrated Cathar exclamations when a universal translator glitched, the intense focus she'd mistaken for mere military discipline. You're not normal, are you, Kalen Vance, she stated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. It wasn't a question. He let out a slow breath. No. I guess I'm not. He leaned back in his chair, the synth leather creaking in protest. I was part of a classified Stellar Concord program. Project Nightingale, they called it. Neural enhancement. Auditory processing modifications. Xenolinguistic specialization. He saw the dawning horror in her eyes, the way her amethystine skin seemed to lose another shade of its vibrant color. They altered me, Lyra. Gave me the ability to hear frequencies far beyond the standard human range. To perceive and reproduce sounds, languages, that were previously considered impossible for humans to master. They modified you. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. In Cathar culture, such artificial alterations of the natural form, especially those affecting the mind or spirit, were considered sacrilege. An abomination. Her people revered the natural evolution of a species, the unique song that each sentient being contributed to the galactic chorus. To artificially change that song. I volunteered, Kalen corrected, his voice firm, though a flicker of defensiveness crossed his features. The Concord needed operatives who could function effectively alongside our diverse allies. Understand their languages, their cultures, without the constant crutch of translators, especially in high-stakes diplomatic or military situations. It was seen as a strategic advantage. A way to bridge the gaps. He paused. I was fascinated by xenolinguistics even before the program. The Cathar language, in particular, with its melodic complexity, it was like nothing I'd ever encountered. He looked at her then, a raw honesty in his eyes. When I heard your father speak your name, Ilaria Th Soranal, it was like hearing the most beautiful, intricate song I'd ever imagined. I memorized it instantly. Not for any mission objective. But because I couldn't bear to forget it. Lyra processed this, her mind reeling. Her cultural abhorrence warred with a strange, burgeoning fascination, a grudging respect for the depth of his appreciation. And then, another chilling thought. So you knew. All along. About our tradition. About the soul binding. Kalen nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. I knew of it. The basics. But I never intended to use it. To invoke it. He gestured vaguely between them, the space suddenly charged. It just slipped out. When you challenged me. It was impulsive. Stupid. He looked away, a muscle working in his jaw. I'm sorry, Lyra. I didn't understand the full weight of it for you. Sorry. Lyra's laugh was brittle, humorless. Kalen, you don't understand. This isn't something a simple sorry can fix. We are bound. Our souls, our fates, they're now one. According to the oldest laws of my people, this is more profound than any marriage, any treaty. It's forever. The enormity of it washed over her again, threatening to drown her. Her future, once a clearly charted course, was now a chaotic, terrifying nebula. And this human, this modified human, was at its center. As if sensing the shift in her emotional state, a new, subtle sensation pricked at Lyra's awareness. A faint echo of Kalen's own turmoil, a sense of his regret, his confusion, almost as if it were her own. A shared feeling. Was this the beginning of it? The soul bond's insidious intertwining? The thought was both terrifying and, strangely intimate. Before she could voice this new, unsettling perception, Kalen spoke again, his voice softer now. There's more, Lyra. About this mission. About why I'm really here. Lyra tensed. More secrets. What is it, Kalen? He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The cargo we're transporting to Beacon Epsilon, it's not just routine supplies. It's for you. He looked at her expectantly, as if waiting for her to understand. Lyra frowned, her Kthar physiology not easily showing confusion in a human-readable way, but her antennae twitched slightly. For me? What are you talking about? My manifest says standard provisions and some replacement parts for the outpost's atmospheric processors. Kalen sighed. That's the official manifest. The real cargo, he keyed a command into his console, and a secure compartment beneath Lyra's own seat hissed open, revealing not ration packs or spare conduits, but a single, sophisticated stasis unit, its interior glowing with a soft, internal light. Inside, nestled in protective cushioning, were rows of small, iridescent vials. Genetic stabilizers, Kalen said quietly. For you, Lyra. Lyra stared at the vials, then back at Kalen, her mind struggling to connect this new piece of the puzzle with everything else. Stabilizers? For what? I'm perfectly healthy. The Kthar High Council has been experimenting, Kalen said, choosing his words carefully. With accelerated reproduction cycles. Cross-species genetic compatibility. Specifically. Kthar and human. He watched her face, gauging her reaction. They selected you for the program, Lyra. Because of your genetic markers. Your unique compatibility with humans. The world tilted again. Her mission. Her assignment with a human co-pilot. The long periods of isolation. It all coalesced into a horrifying, sickening pattern. This was a setup, she whispered, her voice trembling. This entire mission, it was designed for this? She gestured vaguely at the stasis unit, at the space between them. To create some Kthar-human hybrid. Under controlled conditions. Kalen nodded grimly. Your reproductive cycle has been artificially enhanced, Lyra. These stabilizers are necessary to ensure that any conception remains viable. To regulate the process. His eyes met hers, filled with a new understanding, a shared sense of betrayal. They didn't count on you issuing a soul name challenge. They certainly didn't count on me knowing your true name. They didn't count on us becoming soul-bound. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the Nomad's life support. Lyra felt a cold fury rise within her, overriding the shock, the fear. She had been a pawn. A vessel. Her life, her choices, manipulated by her own High Council. And Kalen, he had been a part of it, however unwittingly. The journey to Beacon Epsilon, their supposed sanctuary, now seemed like a voyage into the heart of a conspiracy. Their forced proximity, the shared secrets, the undeniable attraction that had simmered between them, had it all been by design? Or had their accidental soul binding somehow overwritten the script? The distinction suddenly felt critically important. As they navigated the treacherous asteroid field, the silence between them was no longer just tense, it was a raw, open wound. Each revelation had stripped away another layer of their professional facade, leaving them exposed, vulnerable. Yet, amidst the anger and betrayal, a new, fragile emotion began to stir within Lyra, a reluctant, hesitant trust in this human who, despite his own secrets and modifications, seemed as much a victim of galactic machinations as she was. The faint, empathic echo of his emotions, a subtle warmth against the coldness of her fury, was a constant reminder of the irrevocable bond that now tied them together, for better or for worse. Their shared predicament, their mutual deception by their own people, had forged an unlikely alliance, a partnership born not of orders or mission parameters, but of shared desperation and a destiny irrevocably, impossibly, intertwined. The journey to Beacon Epsilon stretched before them, days long, through contested space. Days of forced closeness, of shared meals in the cramped galley, of alternating sleep cycles in the two small bunks. Days where the unspoken tension of their soul binding, and the looming implications of Lyra's true mission, would be their constant companions. The physical pull, the subtle empathic connection that had begun to manifest, grew stronger with each passing parsec. A shared glance would linger too long. An accidental brush of hands would send an unexpected jolt through both of them. They started to share stories, Kalen of his childhood on a remote Martian colony, his fascination with alien languages that had led him to Project Nightingale, Lyra of her harsh Kthar warrior training, the strict codes of honor, the vibrant, dangerous beauty of her homeworld, Kythan. Vulnerabilities were exposed, walls began to crumble. One cycle, as Kalen was describing a particularly vivid memory of watching twin moons rise over a crimson desert on Mars, Lyra felt an overwhelming wave of his poignant loneliness, his yearning for something lost, so acutely it brought tears to her own eyes. He stopped, looking at her in surprise as a single, pearlescent tear traced a path down her amethyst cheek. Lyra? What's wrong? She could only shake her head, unable to explain the shared emotion. I felt it, she whispered. Your sadness. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The soul bond. It wasn't just a legend. It was real. Tangible. And it was changing them both. The culmination was inevitable, born of shared danger, shared secrets, and a bond that defied logic or cultural understanding. Alone in the vast emptiness of space, with the specter of their respective governments' manipulations hanging over them, they found solace in each other. It was a night cycle, the Nomad running on silent, the only light the soft glow of the distant starfields through the viewport. The words were hesitant at first, then flowed more easily, confessions of fear, of anger, of a desperate, burgeoning hope. And then, no words were needed. In the cramped space of the cockpit, surrounded by the cold indifference of the void, they reached for each other. It was an act of defiance, an act of desperation, an act of something akin to love. A poignant, intense coming together, a fusion not just of bodies, but of souls, fully aware that with Lyra's artificially enhanced reproductive cycle and the undeniable power of their soul binding, the consequences could be immediate and life-altering. Choice and design, fate and free will, all tangled together in the heart of a stolen, desperate intimacy. As the Nomad finally neared the coordinates for Beacon Epsilon, a new tension filled the cockpit, sharper and more urgent than before. The outpost, their supposed destination, their only hope for answers and perhaps assistance, was not the welcoming beacon they had envisioned. Instead, What greeted them on the long-range scanners was a scene of chaos and destruction, the urgent, crackling plea of a distress call cutting through the static of deep space, shattering their fragile peace and heralding a new, even more perilous chapter in their intertwined fate. The urgent, static-laced distress call from Beacon Epsilon had shattered the fragile intimacy forged in the Nomad's cockpit, thrusting Kalen and Lyra from one crucible into another. Their destination, once a beacon of potential answers and sanctuary, now loomed as a vision of chaos. Long-range scans painted a grim picture: the sprawling orbital station, a vital joint Ktharstellar Concord research facility, was visibly scarred, sections venting atmosphere, its defensive turrets spitting sporadic, desperate fire against a swarm of sleek, predatory four-lag hegemony cruisers. Sporadic explosions blossom silently in the void, like malignant flowers. "They've breached the primary docking bays and are hitting the science labs hard," Kalen observed, his voice tight with professional assessment, though Lyra could feel the undercurrent of his concern through their burgeoning soul bond, a strange, new sensory input she was still learning to interpret. It was like a faint pressure behind her eyes, an echo of his emotions. Worry. Determination. And a fierce, protective anger. "The genetic research labs," Lyra breathed, her own twin hearts clenching. "That's where the primary Kthar-human hybridization databanks are stored. And where Dr. Eris Thorne would be." Dr. Thorne, her mentor, the lead scientist on the Kthar initiative, the one who had overseen Lyra's enhancements. "We need to get those stabilizers to her, and to anyone else involved in the project," Kalen said, his gaze fixed on the hellish scene unfolding on the main view screen. He expertly piloted the Nomad through a storm of debris and weapons fire, aiming for a secondary, less contested maintenance airlock on the station's dorsal spine. If the Four-Lag get their claws on that research, the implications were unthinkable. The Four-Lag, notorious for their ruthless pursuit of biological weapons and genetic manipulation for conquest, would turn such knowledge into a galactic plague. Their landing was a jarring, bone-rattling affair, the Nomad stealth systems barely masking their arrival as they clamped onto the emergency airlock. Armed with their sidearms and the precious stasis unit containing the genetic stabilizers, they moved swiftly through the darkened, emergency-lit corridors of Beacon Epsilon. The air thrummed with the distant of explosions and the acrid smell of burning electronics and fear. Groaning metal and the hiss of failing life support systems formed a symphony of destruction. Automated warnings blared in multiple languages, mostly ignored. "Life signs ahead," Lyra whispered, her Kthar senses, far sharper than Kalen's, picking up faint traces. Her multifaceted eyes scanned the corridor, her hand resting on the grip of her energy pistol. Human and Kthar. And fear. Lots of it. They rounded a corner to find a hastily barricaded laboratory door, sparks showering from a damaged conduit above it. Kalen tapped the communication panel. "Commander Kalen Vance, Stellar Concord Special Reconnaissance." "Lieutenant Lyra." "Ilaria Th. Soranol of the Kthar Sky Guard. We received your distress call. We have supplies." After a tense moment, the door hissed open to reveal a small group of haggard survivors. Commander Eva Rostova, formerly Valerian, the Stellar Concord officer in charge of Beacon Epsilon, her uniform scorched and torn, her usually stern face etched with exhaustion, nodded grimly. Beside her stood Dr. Eris Thorne, her Kthar lab coat stained with what Lyra disturbingly recognized as Four-Lag ichor, a viscous, greenish-black substance. "Lyra. By the ancestors, you made it." Dr. Thorne's voice was strained, but relief washed over her delicate, avian features as she saw Lyra, and then the stasis unit in Kalen's hands. "The stabilizers. You brought them." As Kalen secured the door behind them, Lyra rushed to Dr. Thorne's side. "Are you all right, mentor?" "Barely," the older Kthar scientist replied, her gaze flicking between Lyra and Kalen, a knowing, almost troubled look in her intelligent eyes. The Four-Lag came without warning. They knew exactly what to target. The main labs, they're lost. Her eyes lingered on Lyra's abdomen for a fraction of a second too long, and Lyra felt a sudden, inexplicable wave of nausea, a strange fluttering sensation deep within her. She dismissed it as stress, the adrenaline of combat. Has the binding occurred? Dr. Thorne asked quietly, her voice barely audible above the distant chaos. Lyra's amethystine skin flushed a deeper violet. How did you know? She stammered, acutely aware of Kaelin's gaze on her. Your aura patterns, child, Dr. Thorne explained, a sad smile touching her lips. They're synchronized. Resonating. It's unmistakable to those Kthar who know what to look for. He spoke your soul name. It wasn't a question. Before Lyra could respond, Commander Rostova interrupted, her voice sharp with urgency. We can discuss personal entanglements later. Right now, the Forelag are trying to hack the central database. They want everything on Project Chimera. Project Chimera. So that was the official, sterile designation for the program that had defined Lyra's existence. If they get that data. What exactly is Project Chimera, Commander? Kaelin demanded, stepping forward, his protective stance around Lyra unmistakable. Lyra told me some of it, but I get the distinct feeling there's more to this than just genetic compatibility. Dr. Thorne and Commander Rostova exchanged a heavy glance. The lab, already thick with the smell of fear and desperation, seemed to grow colder. Subject Lyra, Dr. Thorne began, her professional mask slipping back into place, though her eyes held a deep sorrow as she looked at her former student, isn't just compatible with humans, Commander Vance. She was specifically engineered. The culmination of generations of Kthar genetic research. Her lineage was carefully selected, her genetic structure optimized during embryonic development. Engineered. The word hit Lyra with the force of a plasma bolt. A puppet. A designer baby, bred for a specific purpose. Her warrior training, her piloting skills, her very identity, had it all been a carefully constructed illusion? A lie. The fluttering in her abdomen intensified, becoming a sickening lurch. She swayed, and Kaelin's hand was instantly on her arm, steadying her. Engineered for what, Doctor? Kaelin's voice was dangerously soft. To produce offspring with enhanced capabilities, Dr. Thorne continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Telepathic bridges between Kthar and human. Accelerated healing. Extended lifespan. Abilities that could unite our species in ways we've only theorized. A perfect hybrid bridge. A superchild, Lyra said flatly, the nausea rising. I was created for this. To be bound to a human and produce some weaponized prodigy. Her voice was hollow, devoid of its usual melodic cadence. The betrayal was a physical ache in her twin hearts. You were created with potential, Lyra, Dr. Thorne insisted, her eyes pleading for understanding. What you do with that potential, that has always been, and will always be, your choice. The soul binding, that was never part of the design. That changes everything. A nearby explosion rocked the laboratory, sending equipment crashing to the floor and showering them with dust and debris. Alarms shrieked with renewed intensity. They've breached the secondary containment around the database core. Commander Rostova yelled, checking a flickering security feed. We have maybe 20 minutes before they're on top of us. The evacuation shuttles? Kaelin asked, his mind already calculating odds, formulating strategies. Destroyed in the initial assault, Rostova replied grimly. Our only hope is to hold out until reinforcements arrive from Proxima Station. Which could be days, Dr. Thorne added, her face pale. If they come at all. Days. They didn't have days. Lyra felt another strange spasm in her abdomen, stronger this time. More insistent. She pressed a hand against it, a sudden, terrifying realization dawning. The intimacy with Kaelin on the Nomad. Her artificially enhanced reproductive cycle. The soul binding's biological catalyst effect. Oh, ancestors. No. As if on cue, a wave of dizziness washed over her, and the subtle bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin flared erratically. She stumbled, and Kalen caught her, his arms strong and sure around her. "Lyra? What is it?" His voice was tight with concern. I think," she gasped, her vision swimming. "The baby. Kalen, I think the baby is coming. Now." And as she spoke, she felt an undeniable, powerful shift within her, a rapid, impossible quickening. She looked down at her abdomen, and even through her flight suit, a subtle but definite swell was visible that hadn't been there mere hours ago. The genetic programming, the soul binding, it was accelerating her pregnancy at an unnatural, alarming rate. Days, not months. Perhaps not even days. Hours. The implications were staggering. Trapped. Besieged. And now, this. A new life, conceived in desperation and defiance, was demanding its arrival in the heart of a war zone. Just then, a crackle over the station-wide comms. A new voice. Cold. Measured. Official. To Commander Rostova, Beacon Epsilon. This is Admiral Kreshnikova of the Stellar Concord 3rd Fleet. Pursuant to Emergency Directive 7 Gamma, your outpost has been classified expendable. No reinforcements will be dispatched. All Stellar Concord and Kthar High Council assets are hereby disavowed to prevent further diplomatic escalation with the four-leg hegemony. Maintain operational security. Kreshnikova out. Expendable. Disavowed. Abandoned. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Their own governments had just thrown them to the four-leg wolves. Lyra looked at Kalen, saw the cold fury in his eyes, the grim set of his jaw. He was a soldier betrayed, but more than that, she saw the protector, the man who had inexplicably, impossibly, become her soul-bound mate. The father of her impossibly accelerating child. "All right," Kalen said, his voice a low growl, breaking the stunned silence. He gently eased Lyra into a reinforced examination chair. "New plan. Rostova, Thorn, how many escape pods are still viable on this station?" "The small, research-critical ones, not the standard lifeboats." Commander Rostova blinked. "The deep storage cryopods?" "Maybe 2 in sub-level Gamma. Shielded. Stealth capabilities. But they're designed for single occupants, minimal biocargo." Her eyes widened as she looked at Lyra, then at Kalen. "Then we make them work," Kalen stated, his mind already racing, formulating a new, desperate strategy. "We're not dying here. And neither is our child." He looked at Lyra, his gaze softening for a moment, a promise passing between them that transcended words, a vow forged in the crucible of their shared, impossible fate. He turned back to the small group of survivors. "Here's what we're going to do. We need to get to sub-level Gamma, secure those pods, and create a big enough diversion to give Lyra and our child, a chance." His eyes scanned the haggard faces. "It's going to be risky. Damn near suicidal. But it's the only shot we've got." Lyra, despite the waves of pain and nausea now racking her body, felt a surge of her Kthar warrior spirit. Her hand went to her abdomen, to the impossible life growing within her at an exponential rate. This child, a product of design and defiance, of ancient law and accidental love, would not be born only to die in the ruins of Beacon Epsilon. She would fight. They would all fight. As Kalen began to outline his audacious, desperate plan, a bold combination of feigned surrender, explosive diversions, and precisely timed maneuvers through four-leg-infested corridors, Lyra watched him, no longer just with the grudging respect of a co-pilot, but with a fierce, possessive pride. This human, this Kalen Vance, was more than just a soldier. He was her mate. And he would move heaven and hell, or die trying, to protect what was theirs. The strange, uncomfortable fluttering in her abdomen intensified again, a sharp, undeniable contraction that stole her breath, a stark reminder that their time, in every conceivable way, was running out. The decision made, Kalen and his small, desperate team, including a determined but visibly weakening Lyra, moved into the shadowed, sparking corridors of Beacon Epsilon. The fate of everyone, especially the impossible new life fighting for existence within Lyra, rested on their desperate gambit. Kalen's plan was audacious: create a series of diversions to draw the main forelag forces away from sublevel Gamma, where the shielded cryopods were located, while a smaller team, led by Commander Rostova, would attempt to retake the station's auxiliary command center. Their only hope was to override the launch protocols for the pods and, if possible, contact an incoming forelag diplomatic vessel that Dr. Thorne's long-range sensor intercepts had, almost unbelievably, detected. A diplomatic ship amidst this carnage? It seemed too convenient, too unlikely, but it was the only straw they had to grasp. They moved like ghosts through the service tunnels, the air thick with the stench of burnt plasteel and the metallic tang of forelag blood. Rostova's small security team had evidently put up a fierce, if ultimately futile, resistance in some sectors. Lyra, despite the increasingly powerful contractions that racked her body, moved with the ingrained grace of a Kthar warrior, her energy pistol held steady, her multifaceted eyes scanning every shadow. But Kalen could feel her pain, her exhaustion, through the soul bond, a sickening wave of shared agony that threatened to buckle his own knees. Her amethystine skin, usually so vibrant, had taken on an alarming, ashen hue. The swell of her abdomen was now undeniably pronounced, a shocking testament to the accelerated pregnancy. How much longer could she endure? How much longer until? He pushed the thought away. Focus. Mission. Survival. 2 forelag guards at the main access junction to sublevel Gamma, Kalen whispered into the comm, his voice barely audible above the hum of failing machinery. They were pressed against a bulkhead, the corridor ahead illuminated by the eerie green glow of forelag emergency lighting. Standard infantry, heavy pulse rifles. I'll create a diversion to the east. Rostova, you and your team hit the auxiliary command access point on my signal. Thorne, stay with Lyra. Get her to those pods the second we clear the path. Acknowledged, Vance, Rostova's voice crackled back, tight with tension. May the stars favor us. A human sentiment, but Lyra found herself echoing it in her heart. Kalen dropped from the service hatch into an unoccupied maintenance bay, the clang of his boots on the metal grating deafening in the sudden quiet. He primed a series of small, percussive charges, then triggered a remote alarm in a distant, already damaged, section of the station. As expected, one of the forelag guards at the junction moved to investigate the new disturbance, its guttural commands echoing down the corridor. One guard left. Manageable. What wasn't expected, what couldn't have been planned for, was the sudden, strangled gasp from Lyra as she attempted to follow Kalen down from the hatchway. Kalen, she hissed, her voice tight with an agony that lanced through him via the bond, nearly crippling him. It's happening. The baby, now. He turned, his heart lurching, just in time to see her clutch her abdomen, her knuckles white, her face contorted in a rictus of pain. The stabilizers Dr. Thorne had administered earlier, a desperate attempt to slow the impossible gestation, were failing. Failing catastrophically. For a single, frozen moment, Kalen was torn. The mission, the lives of the other survivors, the potential to save them all by reaching the diplomatic vessel, versus Lyra. His soul bound. The mother of his child. It wasn't a choice. Not really. Not anymore. Change of plans, Rostova, he barked into the comm, already moving towards Lyra, scooping her surprisingly light Kthar frame into his arms. Lyra's in full labor. I'm getting her to the nearest medbay. You and your team are on your own with the command center. Make it happen. Vance, negative. We need you for the breach. The forelag are reinforcing. Rostova's protest was cut off as Kalen terminated the channel. She was a good soldier, she'd figure it out. Or she wouldn't. Right now, only Lyra mattered. Only their child. He found a small, Relatively secure medical bay 3 corridors down, its door surprisingly intact. He laid Lyra gently on an examination table, her breathing shallow, her beautiful, alien face slick with sweat. The automated systems flickered to life, scanning her vitals, projecting alarming, incomprehensible Kthar medical symbols above the table. But the rapidly expanding curve of her belly told its own story. "Talk to me, Lyra," Kalen urged, his voice surprisingly calm as he wiped her brow with a trembling hand. "Focus on my voice. Remember that ridiculous joke you made? About your name? About being bound to me if I guessed it?" A faint smile touched her lips, a brief respite from the pain. "Hardly a joke, now, is it, human?" she gasped, as another contraction, more powerful than the last, seized her. He brushed her silver hair from her face. "Did I ever tell you why I volunteered for Project Nightingale? For the neural enhancements?" She shook her head, her eyes wide, locking onto his. "Xenolinguistics. I was always fascinated by alien languages. As a kid, back on Mars, I used to listen to an old, crackly recording of a Kthar star song for hours, trying to mimic the sounds, the cadences." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "When I heard your father speak your true name, Ilaria Soranal, it was like finally understanding that song. The most beautiful, complex melody I'd ever encountered. I memorized it instantly. Not for the mission. Just because I couldn't bear to forget its beauty." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, a mixture of pain and a profound, heart-shattering emotion. "And now, you're bound to me forever because of it." "Best mistake I ever made," he whispered, leaning close, his forehead touching hers. Just as the door to the med bay hissed open and Dr. Eris Thorne rushed in, her face a mask of concern and urgency. "By the ancestors. The soul binding, it's accelerated the gestation beyond anything we predicted." Dr. Thorne exclaimed, immediately assessing the situation, her hands flying over a medical console. "The stabilizers should have bought us more time." Another powerful contraction seized Lyra, and she cried out, a raw, primal sound that tore at Kalen's soul. The medical scanner above the table beeped frantically. "Delivery phase initiated," its synthesized Kthar voice announced. "Detecting unique hybrid physiology. Standard Kthar birthing protocols, insufficient." Dr. Thorne's expression grew even more concerned. "The baby's genetic structure, it's confusing the automated systems. I'll have to deliver manually." Just as she began her preparations, the station-wide communication system crackled to life, Commander Rostova's voice, strained but triumphant, echoing through the speakers. "Attention all Beacon Epsilon personnel. Auxiliary Command Center is secure. Repeat, command is secure. We've made contact with the 4-lag diplomatic vessel Harbinger of Dawn. They confirm the attacking ships are a purist splinter faction, acting against hegemony orders. The Harbinger is requesting permission to dock. They say they're here to stop the purists and offer assistance." A wave of dizzying relief washed over Kalen, so potent it almost buckled his knees. But it was shattered by Lyra's sharp cry as another, even more intense contraction ripped through her. "Focus on what's happening here, Kalen." Dr. Thorne instructed, her voice sharp, positioning herself to assist with the delivery. "The diplomats can wait. This child cannot." The next minutes passed in a blur of agonizing intensity. Lyra's accelerated labor progressed with a speed that was both terrifying and miraculous. Kalen stayed by her side, his hand gripping hers, whispering her soul name, Ilaria Soranal, over and over, the sound a lifeline, a tether grounding her through the storm of sensation. He could feel her pain, her strength, her fear, her fierce determination, all flowing through their bond, a torrent of shared experience. "One more push, Lyra. One more." Dr. Thorne encouraged, her usual scientific composure momentarily cracking with a fierce excitement. "The child is almost here." Lyra gathered her remaining strength, her amethystine skin glistening, her silver hair plastered to her temples. She bore down one final time, a warrior's cry tearing from her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated effort, of life forcing its way into existence against all odds. And then, the room filled with a new sound. A tiny, yet surprisingly strong, cry. The first breath of a child who, by all known biological and natural laws, should not yet exist. "It's a girl," Dr. Thorne announced, her voice thick with unshed tears, as she gently, reverently, placed the impossibly small, yet perfectly formed newborn on Lyra's chest. "And she is perfect." The infant was a breathtaking, impossible fusion of two species. Her skin shifted with an inner light, sometimes a warm, human-like rose, sometimes the deep, sunset hues of her Kthar mother. Wisps of silver-white hair, Lyra's hair, crowned her delicate head. But most remarkable, most astonishing, were her eyes. When they fluttered open, they were Kalen's gray, human in shape, but flecked with the unmistakable, luminous golden starbursts characteristic of Kthar vision. A true melding. A new song. "Elara," Lyra whispered, her voice weak but filled with an overwhelming love that radiated through the soul bond, warming Kalen to his core. "Her name is Elara." "She's beautiful," Kalen breathed, utterly awestruck, as one of Elara's tiny, impossibly delicate fingers, with just the faintest hint of Kthar claws, wrapped around his much larger one. He felt a connection to this child, this miracle, so profound it eclipsed everything else. Before they could fully absorb the wonder of it, the med bay door slid open again. Commander Rostova stood there, no longer looking quite so haggard, and beside her, a tall, regal four-leg female, clad not in battle armor, but in the flowing, iridescent robes of a high diplomat. Her reptilian features, usually so intimidating to humans and Kthar alike, were softened by an expression of undisguised wonder. "I apologize for the intrusion," the four-leg emissary said, her voice surprisingly melodic, a series of soft, sibilant clicks and chimes. "I am Emissary Vela of the four-leg hegemony. When we learned of the accelerated birth, when Commander Rostova explained the unique circumstances, I insisted on coming immediately." Her gaze, ancient and wise, fell upon the newborn Elara, nestled in Lyra's arms. An expression akin to reverence touched her features. "By the coiled serpent of eternity, such a child." "I believe," Emissary Vela stated, her voice resonating with a conviction that sent shivers down Kalen's spine, "your daughter, this star child, may indeed be the key to a lasting peace between all our worlds." The weight of her words, the hope, the crushing responsibility, settled upon them, a fragile dawn breaking over the ruins of their desperate battle. The birth of Elara had brought a fragile, almost unbelievable truce to the chaos of Beacon Epsilon, but the universe, it seemed, was far from done with Kalen Vance and Lyra Elaria Sorinal. Aboard the four-leg hegemony diplomatic vessel, the harbinger of dawn, they found themselves in a state of suspended animation, a temporary bubble of peace as they journeyed through the void. Emissary Vela, a four-legged of surprising grace and intellect, had offered them formal sanctuary within the hegemony. Their newborn daughter, Elara, this impossible child of two species, was to be honored, Vela had assured them, as a symbol of potential unity, a bridge between worlds. It was a tempting offer. Safety. Resources. Acknowledgement. After the betrayals and abandonments, it sounded like a paradise. Lyra, still weak from the accelerated birth but recovering with Kthar resilience, held Elara close in the private, opulently appointed quarters Vela had assigned them. The four-legged ship was a marvel of organic technology, its corridors softly lit, the air clean and carrying faint, unidentifiable but pleasant botanical scents. A stark contrast to the utilitarian functionality of Concord ships or the Spartan efficiency of Kthar vessels. Kalen stood at the expansive viewport, gazing at the star-strewn canvas, little Elara cradled against his chest. He was pointing out constellations, his voice a low murmur, telling the infant stories of old Earth, of Sol, of the Kthar homeworld Kaidan, weaving a tapestry of heritage for a child who belonged to both and neither. "That one there, little star spark," Kalen whispered, his finger tracing a pattern on the viewport, "that's the Sol system, where my people first looked up and dreamed of reaching out. And over there, he shifted, pointing to a faint, distant shimmer, is the Kythones cluster, where your mother's ancestors learned to navigate the star songs. Elara gurgled, her unique eyes, Kaelin's grey flecked with Lyra's gold, fixed on his face with an awareness that seemed far too profound for a child mere hours old. The illusion of peace, however, was brutally shattered when Commander Eva Rostova, who had been granted temporary asylum alongside them and Dr. Thorne, entered their quarters without preamble, her face a mask of grim urgency. Vance. Lyra. We have a problem. A big one. She held out a datapad, its screen displaying heavily encrypted Cthar and Stellar Concord communiques she had managed to intercept and decrypt using the Harbinger's powerful, and apparently not entirely secure, communication arrays. Retrieval teams have been dispatched. From both our governments. Kaelin turned from the viewport, his body tensing, the soldier in him instantly alert. Retrieval? What do you mean? Rostova's expression was bleak. They're classifying Lyra and the child as assets. Government property to be reclaimed and studied. Project Chimera is now top priority for both the Concord High Council and the Cthar Xenogenesis Synod. They want a Lara. And they want Lyra, to ensure continued production. The clinical, dehumanizing language sent a chill down Lyra's spine. Kaelin's reaction was palpable. A cold fury radiated from him, so intense it was almost a physical force in the room. The easygoing facade he sometimes wore vanished, replaced by the deadly focus of a predator. Lyra had seen glimpses of this Kaelin before, the Special Forces operative, the man who had survived impossible odds. But this was different. This was the fury of a mate, a father, protecting his own property, he growled, his voice dangerously low. They think they can just claim them. The ethical dilemma was a chasm before them. Accept Emissary Vela's offer of sanctuary. Live as honored guests, perhaps, but also as political symbols, their lives, and Alara's future, dictated by the intricate, often ruthless, politics of the four-lag hegemony. Or, disappear. Vanish into the uncharted territories of the Outer Rim, where no single government held sway, where they might, just might, be able to forge a life on their own terms, raise Alara not as an asset or a symbol, but simply as their daughter. The desire for safety warred with an almost overwhelming yearning for freedom, for a normal life, whatever that might mean for a Cthar warrior, a neurally enhanced human soldier, and their star-touched child. What do we do, Kaelin? Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper, her gaze fixed on the tiny, perfect face of her daughter. Elara was gurgling softly, her minute hand grasping Kaelin's offered finger, utterly oblivious to the galactic storm brewing around her. Kaelin looked at Lyra, then at Elara, his expression softening, the fury in his eyes banked but not extinguished. We give her a chance, Lyra. A real chance. To be a child. Not a specimen. Not a political pawn. His decision was clear. Theirs. When Emissary Vela next graced their quarters, her tall, reptilian form strangely elegant in the ship's ambient light, they delivered their decision. We are deeply grateful for your most generous offer of sanctuary, Emissary, Kaelin began, Lyra's hand resting on his arm, a silent show of unity. But we have chosen a different path for our family. If Vela was surprised, her impassive four-leg features hid it well. A long, delicate nictitating membrane slid sideways across her large, golden eyes. I see. Her voice, a series of melodic clicks and whistles, held no judgment. The call of the uncharted regions is strong for those who seek to define their own destinies. May I ask where you intend to go? With all due respect, Emissary, Lyra interjected, her voice regaining some of its former strength, we believe it's better if you don't know. For your own plausible deniability, should our former associates come asking. Vela considered this for a long moment, her head tilting slightly. Then, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. A wise precaution. I understand. She paused. However, my belief in the potential your child represents, the potential for understanding, for unity, transcends mere political expediency. What was done to you, Lyra, the manipulation by your High Council, was a perversion of the natural order. And your daughter, she deserves the chance to write her own story, free from the machinations of empires. The four-legged diplomat then produced a small, intricately carved data crystal. This contains new, untraceable identities for all three of you. A significant transfer of untraceable transgalactic credits. And coordinates to several independent, self-governing worlds in the outer rim where my people have, unofficial, but reliable, contacts. Consider it a gift. From one who still believes in the possibility of a better galaxy. The sheer unexpectedness of Vela's aid left them momentarily speechless. Dr. Eris Thorne, who had been quietly conferring with Rostova, stepped forward. Emissary, your compassion does you credit. She then turned to Lyra and Kaelin. I have prepared a compact medical kit with specific Thar-human hybrid neonatal supplies and long-range diagnostic instructions for Alara's unique physiology. It's not much, but it's everything, Eris, Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion, clasping her mentor's hand. Commander Rostova, ever the pragmatist, offered tactical advice for evading Concord and Thar patrols, common routes to avoid, sensor ghosts they could deploy. Unexpected allies, indeed. Found family, forged in the crucible of betrayal and war. Their departure was quiet, almost stealthy. The four-leg agreed to release them in a long-range, heavily shielded shuttle near the chaotic, sensor-baffling currents of the Vidian Nebula, a place where even the most determined pursuers would find their quarry difficult to track. As they packed their meager belongings, a few changes of clothes, the precious medical kit, the stasis unit of stabilizers, now perhaps redundant, but kept just in case, and Vela's priceless data crystal, the reality of their fugitive status began to sink in. They would be hunted. Constantly looking over their shoulders. But they would be together. And they would be free. Or so they hoped. We'll need a cover story, Kaelin said, as he secured Alara into a makeshift safety harness in the shuttle. Something believable. Unremarkable. Lyra considered this, a faint smile playing on her lips. How about two star-crossed scientists, one Kthar, one human, who met during a joint research expedition in a remote sector? Fell in love against all odds, had a child, a miracle child, and decided to seek a quieter, less complicated life, far from the prying eyes and political intrigues of the core systems. Kaelin chuckled, a low, warm sound that Lyra felt resonate through their bond. Not entirely untrue, is it? Though I think our actual story is far more interesting. He leaned down, brushing a kiss against Lyra's forehead, then against Alara's downy silver hair. Imagine trying to explain this to Alara when she's older. Well, sweetheart, Lyra murmured, her gaze soft as she looked at her daughter, it all started when your very predictable human father did something utterly unpredictable. And your Kthar mother made a very, very foolish joke about her name. Their laughter, soft and intimate, mingled in the shuttle's confined space, a fragile moment of lightness before the vast, terrifying, exhilarating uncertainty that lay ahead. The great Vidian Nebula, a kaleidoscope of cosmic dust and nascent stars, loomed before them on the main viewport, a gateway to their unknown, fugitive future. With their decision made and the aid of an unlikely, yet profoundly compassionate ally in emissary Vela, Kaelin, Lyra, and little Alara stood on the precipice of an entirely new, utterly unknown existence. The vast, turbulent expanse of the Vidian Nebula, a swirling kaleidoscope of cosmic dust, incandescent gases, and nascent stars, loomed before them on the main viewport of the four-leg shuttle. It was their gateway to the outer rim colonies, a scattering of independent worlds, forgotten outposts, and hidden sanctuaries where the long arm of the stellar Concord or the Kthar High Council might, with luck and considerable skill on their part, not reach. Or at least, not easily. Their goodbyes to the handful of survivors from Beacon Epsilon, Commander Rostova, who had chosen to accept Vela's offer and return to Concord space to face whatever music awaited her, and Dr. Eris Thorne, who had tearfully entrusted Lyra with a wealth of Kthar pediatric knowledge and a promise to try and work from within the Kthar Xenogenesis Synod to change their archaic, dangerous views, had been brief, heartfelt, and heavy with unspoken fears. As the shuttle detached from the elegant, organic lines of the four-legged diplomatic vessel, the harbinger of dawn, and plunged into the sensor-baffling chaos of the nebula, a profound silence settled in the cockpit. Elara, miraculously, slept peacefully in a makeshift, softly padded travel cradle, her tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, blissfully unaware that her very existence had already irrevocably altered the course of interstellar relations and made her parents the most wanted fugitives in two major galactic powers. Kalen piloted the shuttle with a practiced ease, his gray eyes constantly scanning the tumultuous starscape, his senses, both natural and neurally enhanced, on high alert for any sign of pursuit. Lyra watched him, her heart a confusing mix of fear, exhaustion, and an overwhelming, fierce love. This human, this Kalen Vance, who had started as an annoying, if competent, co-pilot, had become her soul-bound, the father of her child, her anchor in a universe that had suddenly turned hostile and predatory. Their journey had been a relentless crucible, from a fateful, almost flippant jest about her soul name, to the terrifying reality of their bond, through betrayals, battles, and the impossible, accelerated birth of their daughter. Each trial had stripped away another layer of her Kthar reserve, her warrior's stoicism, leaving her vulnerable. But also, somehow, stronger. More herself than she had ever been. "Are you afraid?" Kalen asked quietly, his voice a low rumble that didn't break the fragile peace, his gaze momentarily flicking from the swirling nebular clouds to meet hers. The soul bond thrummed between them, a silent language of shared emotion. He could feel her trepidation, just as she could feel his unwavering resolve, and beneath that, his own deep-seated fears for their child, for her. "Yes," Lyra admitted, her voice barely a whisper. She reached out, her slender, amethystine fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. His skin was warm beneath her touch, so different from her own Kthar coolness, yet so right. "But not of what lies ahead, Kalen. Not of the running, the hiding, the uncertainty. I'm a Kthar warrior, I was bred for challenge." She paused, her multifaceted eyes, so like her daughter's would one day be, searching his. "I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover this was all just some bizarre, fevered dream. That you never spoke Ilaria th Soranal. That we never found each other. That Elara," she couldn't finish the sentence, her throat tightening. Kalen captured her hand, his calloused human fingers lacing through hers, a gesture of such simple, profound intimacy it made her twin hearts ache. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear, the familiar, comforting scent of his synth coffee and something uniquely Kalen filling her senses. He didn't speak her soul name this time, the name that had irrevocably bound their fates. Instead, he whispered three simple, human words, words that in his language, carried a weight, a power, a depth of meaning that resonated with the very core of her being, a counterpoint to the ancient magic of her own people. "I love you." A flush of deep violet warmed Lyra's skin. She returned the sentiment in her own Kthar tongue, the melodic, harmonic sounds flowing like the starlight that surrounded them, a song just for him. "Soranal ka, Kalen. My star song, my Kalen." It wasn't a direct translation of his human words, but it was the closest her language, her heart, could come to expressing the vastness of what she felt for him, for the family they had become. He smiled then, a genuine, unguarded smile that crinkled the corners of his gray eyes and transformed his usually stoic face, making him look younger, almost boyish. "Not so boring and predictable now, am I, my Kthar warrior?" he teased gently, referring back to her initial playful jibe from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Never boring, Kalen Vance," she conceded, her own lips curving upwards. "And perhaps, delightfully unpredictable." Elara stirred in her cradle then, making a soft, contented sigh, as if sensing the love and hope that enveloped her. Lyra and Kalen looked at their daughter, this tiny miracle, this symbol of their improbable love, their defiant choice. She was not just a Kthar human hybrid, not merely the product of a clandestine genetic program or an ancient, mystical law. She was Alara, their daughter, their future. And they would brave any danger, defy any empire, to give her the life she deserved, a life of freedom, of choice, of love. Their future was a vast, uncharted territory, fraught with peril. They were fugitives, with the combined might of two galactic powers potentially hunting them. There would be no easy days, no true rest, not for a long time. But as their small shuttle, a tiny speck of light and hope, finally cleared the dazzling, turbulent currents of the Vidian Nebula and emerged into the clear, star-dusted expanse of the outer rim, heading towards the coordinates Vela had provided, towards a new, uncertain beginning, they faced it together. A family forged in cosmic fire, bound by a star-sung vow, their journey a testament to a love that had, against all odds, found a way. Their story, Lyra knew with a certainty that resonated deep within her soul, was only just beginning. The universe was vast, and their song, the song of their improbable family, had only just begun to echo among the stars.